Thank you very much.
Looking forward to this, man.
Thank you for the great introduction. Hi,
Thank you.
everyone. It's nice to see all of you here. And so I was actually asked to speak a little bit about sort of like presentations and pitching. Because I actually think this is one of the most important things any startup actually needs to do. A friend of mine, I don't want to say friend, associate and competitor of mine, and his name is Kevin Hale over at Y Combinator. He talks about the most important thing about a startup is really the clarity of the idea. And I think that's one of the challenges. In the way I think about this is, if you are not clear about presenting what you're doing, that means you probably don't have a good command and understanding of what you're doing. So it's probably pretty important. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to do a roughly 10 to 15-minute presentation that's sort of like broad brushstrokes of like what, as an investor, as a VC investor, we look for, and some lessons I've seen from just so many presentations, and most of them are just terrible, including some of my companies. And hopefully they've gotten better over time. All right, so let's jump into this. Next slide. I should turn it on. It is. All right. Great. So who am I? This is my established credibility slide. I'm a partner at 500 Startups. I've actually been at 500 now for 4 years. I've had about 329 companies actually go through my program. So we've seen a lot of stuff. And if it seems like it's a lot of companies, it is a lot of companies. But understand that we're working with a large universe. So just to give you some stats about our program, we get about 3,500 applications, and we take 30 to 40 companies. And so it is not easy to get in. And so this is a credit to James as well as our friend at Funderful. You know, it is not easy to get in. And so the other thing is I spend a lot of time mentoring at startup accelerators. I also sit on several boards and advisory boards. And I was an operator in my past career. So I was at Yahoo for many years. I don't know if I should be proud about that, but I was also at an early stage startup that raised about $30 million and also died. So I'm not sure if I should be proud about that too. But I've learned a lot of stuff along the way. So I work at 500 Startups, and one of the great things at working these accelerators and working with, in a company of a lot of also very great programs, one of the things that all these programs teach you is pitching, right? Because we get pitched everywhere we go, and especially for our startups, we want to train them, make sure that they're ready to present to investors and downstream investors. And so we spend a lot of time on this. And so a couple things we've learned along the way. Let's see. This is, maybe I'm just an idiot. Okay, great. So as I said, one of the first things, and this is very critical, is the importance of the thing is the clarity of the idea. You need to make sure what you're doing is clear to whoever is hearing this. Seems very basic, but you don't know how many startup pitches I sit in, and they're like explaining. I'm like, I literally have no idea what you're doing, and if I don't have any idea of what you're doing, what's the likelihood of me actually investing in what you do? The likelihood is 0, right? So just to be very clear, this is important. Storytelling. So storytelling is probably one of the most important skills that any human being can actually be involved in and actually can learn. And so, for example, everyone knows Pixar, right? They make these amazing movies. Why is Pixar so great at this? Do you know the amount of time that Pixar actually spends? Guess how much time Pixar actually spends on the story aspect of it, figuring out the plot, and then actually like drawing and animating. Does anybody want to guess how much time they spend on the animation of the story? 80-20? Yeah, it's roughly about 80-20. They spend 80% of their time actually scoping out the story and fine-tune the plot in the story before they actually sit down and actually animate. Why is that? And that's one of the reasons you look at every single one of their movies. They're so well done because the story is so powerful and impactful. And so storytelling is actually one of the most critical skills. And when I say storytelling is useful not just for investors and trying to pitch investors. Storytelling is important for everything that you do in sales, in actually convincing people to join your company. It's one of the most critical aspects. And even from an investing perspective, there's actually been studies that it shows that when you actually try to pitch someone just a lot of numbers and just overwhelm them with logic, it actually doesn't work. The way that you actually get into the investors and incept an investor's mind is actually stories. And the reason for this, if you think about human beings, we're wired to listen to stories, right? Back to thousands and thousands of years ago, sitting around the campfire, people, how they passed around their history is actually through stories, right? The stories that your parents actually passed down to you. It sticks in your head. And so we are incredibly well wired to pick up stories. Right. The other thing, So important, right? Like there's this view that like, oh, I just go and like tell you my technology and they're going to figure it out. It's dumb. The most important thing you want to start with is the articulation of the problem you are trying to solve, right? There's this sort of like, I would say, unfortunate view that startup founders think that investors know everything. It's fundamentally untrue. Investors are stupid and they're lazy and they don't want to think. And so it's your job to incept what you're doing and talk about what you're doing in a way that they understand, right? Because most investors, like most people in general, we're all lazy, right? So I don't want to think. Like I don't want to go and like try to figure out what the hell it is you're trying to do. So the articulation of the problem is actually important. Size of the market, right? As a VC, understanding very different than an angel investor. As a VC is looking at investing in large markets. So for example, if you come and tell me where it's like I'm investing, like I'm building this business, it's gonna solve the problem for like whatever, like 50 people or like 100 people, like I don't care. I'm looking for markets that could be potentially like billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar markets. And so this is actually critical as well too. Just like help me understand what the market actually looks like. This is important. What's your secret, right? Like why is this the right time of sort of doing what you're doing? Why are you doing this? What's the unique insight about this market that nobody else actually has, right? Like this is actually, in my opinion, also one of the critical pieces that a lot of founders actually, sort of like miss. And so for me, like like all the best founders I've actually invested in or have like some unique insight about what's happening in the market or some unique insight about the competition that nobody else actually has. And so that's actually the advantage that they have coming in. And they educate you as like an investor. Right. Next slide. Yeah. Okay. That's weird. Back again. Yes. And the other thing that I actually look for, is this right? Yeah, that's right. The other thing I look for is actually tight, crisp answers, right? Because you're trying to sort of like not waste time. And when somebody actually has like nice, short, tight answers, it's actually better. I don't want like a, sort of like a half-hour like lesson on whatever the thing that. Give me a short, concise answer. Don't over-explain what you're doing. Okay. Other thing, competition. Super, super important. I want to understand the competitive landscape that you're in, right? Because as I mentioned to you, investors, we may not know your market. I would say in most cases, we probably will not know the market better than you. And so help me understand like how you are competitive versus sort of like who's in the market, what are other people doing, and sort of what the competition actually looks like, right? Are there like hundreds of competitors? Are there 5 competitors? And one of the things I will add is that if the answer is like we have no competition, that's a shitty answer, right? It's a shitty answer because it either means that nobody's doing what you're doing because there's like literally no business there, or you have not done the homework and actually just used Google to find out who other people that are actually doing what you're doing. There's always competition. The other part, differentiation, right? So it's like, great, like you have like hundreds of competitors. Why are you different, unique, and better than they are? You better have an answer, because if you do not have an answer, that means you're just one of like 100 other companies doing the same thing. And so this is actually something I would argue, whether you are a startup, whether you are an employee, or whether you are somebody applying for a job, everything that you do is about differentiation and standing out, preferably in a good way. And the other part is just really making sure that you have a sense of urgency and hustle. And this is what we specifically look for, right? Not only are you smart, like we're looking for smart founders. Most founders are smart. Most founders are not idiots, right? But the big question is like, can you do the hard work? And can you actually have that sense of urgency and be decisive and move very, very quickly? Because as a startup, the one thing that you do not have is time, right? You don't have money, you don't have time. The most important thing is actually time. And so can you move fast and be decisive? And also a big part that we look for is, or at least I think most good investors will look for, are what does a customer set look like? Like who is a customer, and what do you know about the customer? What is unique about them? And it's a very, very specific sort of customer segment. Really understand that. And so, there's this great saying, is that I think having a great idea is vastly overrated. I know it sounds like kind of crazy and counterintuitive. I don't think it matters what the idea is, almost. You actually need great execution, right? So the pitching's great, but the other thing that you actually have to look for whoops, is data and traction, right? Because data and traction trumps all this stuff. You could be the best storyteller and you have no data and traction. That's okay. The best thing is you're a great storyteller and you have data and traction because it's very, very hard to argue against traction. It's I have 10 customers who are actually paying me money. Like, I can't argue against that. I might think you're an idiot. I might think your market's small, or I might think a lot of things, but I cannot argue against paying customers. Right? So this is actually important. And especially in a crowded space where there's like lots and lots of competition, the thing that differentiates you is your growth and actual real traction. You cannot argue against traction. The other thing that's also important, and the main reason if you think about this, right, and this is where I think our philosophy is different versus some of the other programs out there, like there's this view, and I say it's a broken view in Silicon Valley, that all you do is build it and they will come. All you need is a great product and then that's all you need. It's fundamentally wrong. The main reason that most startups and most companies fail is because they cannot get customers and they cannot get customers in a cost-effective way. And so understanding sort of like what is your customer acquisition strategy if you're a B2B startup? Like, is it enterprise sales? Are you using telesales? And the other part is like, what are the unit economics? Like if it costs you $100 to get a customer and they're only giving you like $50 lifetime value, there's something broken. You do not have a business. And so understanding what these unit economics, or at least having a view on what the potential unit economics are. Your team is actually super important. And for one of the things that we look for is a balanced team. We call it like the hacker, the hustler, and the hipster, right? Hacker is like a tech person, the hipster is a design person, and the hustler is like the business person. We think, and it isn't always the case, but we think in general, because startups are so hard and these roles are so specialized, that you need to have like multiple founders, preferably with sort of like complementary skill sets. And so the team aspect is actually really important. And last of all is really the vision, right? Like, is this worth fighting for? Like, great, like, there's a reason why I don't like invest in like tobacco companies, right? Because like, I'm not sure that's the future I actually want for my children. And so it's the same thing, just like I want to see people have like big ideas and businesses that actually can make the world a better place. It seems like a cliche, but this actually does work for investors, right? Like most investors don't just care about money. We do care about money. We care about making lots of money, but we also care about making an impact and preferably positive impact on the world. And so making sure you have a clear articulation of what this world could be and why your product and business is going to do this. Right? And so by Lily Walters, the success of your presentation will be judged not by the knowledge you send, but by what the listener receives. And so hopefully this gives you a framework or a general view. I can spend a lot more time on this, but this gives you a general view on sort of like what investors look for. And generally speaking, I think like whether you are a startup founder, whether you are an employee, like all these skills are actually valuable for you. And so with that, yes, we're ready to go.
Excellent. You're very sharp, but before we position, I'd love to take at least two questions. Two
good questions.
Well, let's see. Let's see who has it. Now, I have this box once again, and I'm going to throw it to somebody. Guys, questions. This is a rare opportunity. One, sir, you were the first one. The second one, please be ready. Now, could you please come closer if there's any space? I don't want to throw it to the nice gentleman in front of you. You ready?
Oh, nice catch.
Yeah,
hey,
good.
Thanks for this. Question rather simple. Because yesterday on the top stage and on T stage, we listened for a bunch of pitches. A lot of them were actually following this framework.
Sure.
Honest question to you: do you not get bored by the standard presentations following same steps, the team, the addressable market, and all that,
So here's my view, right? Like all those things I listed are components, right? Like I need to understand the team, I need to understand the market, but it's sort of like how you articulate it and how you build a storyline around that. It changes, right? I think a good startup founder articulates that in different ways, right? And I worry about sort of formulaic pitching in general, where it's like you talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. That's boring. right? And so one of the things we spend a lot of time with our companies, they don't always listen, but one of the things we spend a lot of time is just like, you want to present in a very unique and authentic way to yourself. And so present it, whereas like some folks like start with like the market, other people start with team, like, but those are very, very important components. And the differentiating piece is actually you have to present with some element of like passion and actually interest of like, show that you actually care about this and you're not just like blah, 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 right? Like it's just, and so I think like there's a framework that you use, but there's also the delivery aspect is also just as important. And I would say generally speaking, I do get bored by pitches, but like that's my job, right? Like my job is to find the unique, interesting company out of all these shitty pitches, right?
All right, let's do it. Excellent. I have a question on my end. How do you bring out the authenticity in a founder? Because at some point they're so scripted and sick and tired of their own voice, repeating it hundreds and hundreds of times. How do you, as somebody who's giving them feedback, help them bring that?
That's a great question, and I would say I don't necessarily do that myself. Like I have a team, we provide a lot of different feedback. Well, other things that we do is we bring people like either from like theater people, we bring people from like Hollywood now who basically go and like help them like like actors or ex-actors basically help them figure out like what their voice is.
Any famous names? Any famous names?
No, not really.
All right, cool. Fair enough, guys.
Really.
Hand of applause for Marvin,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you, sir.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Sheel, you're next up.
No,
We're gonna.
You're both,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, together.
We have 2 startups that I believe signed up for this, Collectly, if I'm not mistaken, and you're the first. And you have a fun name, Industrial Geodetic Systems R&D. We got to figure out the name. Now, Collectly, if I'm not mistaken, Collectly in the house. You are. I welcome you on stage, and I wish you good luck. Now,
Hi, my name is Davis. I'm co-founder and CEO of Collectly. Where's my pitch deck?
we ready? We have a pitch deck?
How are you doing today? How do you like my shoes?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this happens more often than I like to admit. When the slide deck is not being present, and this is a pretty dramatic moment. Gentlemen, your decision. Do you want to ask him to pitch without the slide deck?
Yeah.
Without slide deck?
Yeah, do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. Hand of applause for this man. Come on, let's do it.
Do you know how typical sports fan looks? Maybe he's fat, he's like to watch his favorite teams, how it's going, achievements, the TV, but he might not sport by himself. So, sports clubs and organizations have 3 main problems. They have limited financial and human resources, difficulties to monetize fans out of the game time, and low fan engagement, especially of younger audience. So, we made a solution which we are convinced can help to solve all previously mentioned problems in one mobile app and helps them to save money because they have no need to build their own solution, make money, monetize fans by merchandise through the app, and increase fans engagement by low investments. And there needs to come product slides. Okay. Collectly is a 360 white label solution to keep their fans' attention out of the game time with adjustable design, latest news about team or league, live scores and statistics, signature fantasy engine, shop and sponsor promotion options.
All right, let's catch up.
It's not working. Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
this is the typical sports fan. So yes, this is Collectly. Attractive design, live scores and statistics, latest news about his favorite team, signature fantasy engine, shop and sponsor promotion options, and our secret sauce, augmented reality sports cards. We created a win-win business model which is based on revenue share. So far, what is the major difference from competitors? No one has used it so far. In the following year, our plans are to enter European market. Now we are working really close with Latvian Hockey Federation to develop our MVP product. And we plan to close this year with at least 10 clients from Europe. there are competitors in the market, but the main difference is that they offer all those fun engagement and monetizing features separately. Collectly is the world's first solution which includes all of those features in one mobile app to help to get the best possible outcome for each organization. This is the roadmap which we created on November 2017. So far, major milestones are kept, and we are working really regarding to the plans. And of course, behind every great idea, there's a team of bright minds. We are a small and diverse of knowledge team. So, to ensure our goal and develop first-class product, we are looking for new intelligence mind of the team, representatives of the product outside Europe, and financial support to develop extra features. Sports market has huge growth potential in coming years, and sports investors are getting more involved in startup community and technology used in the industry. Sorry. So, be one of the smart guys, don't miss your chance, and join Collectly. Thank you. Contacts for booking.
Wait, stand on stage, stand on stage. Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah, stand on stage. Question for everyone. Do people know what he does? So, do people understand what he does? Who understands what he does? Boy, that's two people.
Not too many people, yeah.
Two people. That's kind of a problem. A little bit of a problem. What
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why you started with the fat guy. Like, what does a sports fan being fat have to do with your product?
He's the guy who will use our solution.
Okay. What does him being fat have to do with anything?
I don't know. I thought it will be funny, but it's not, and now I'm in problems.
It was worth trying.
Oh, it was a good try.
Yeah. It's worth trying. You know, one of the things that somebody asked me this question is like, aren't you tired of listening to pitches, right? And my general advice, and my teams apologize if they've heard this before, but I actually think like it was so sort of like, this is a business, and there's like nothing about your personal story on like, why are you doing this, right? Like, what's motivating you to sort of do this? How did you stumble upon this opportunity? And you just went very, very quickly. Like, so, you know, technically you were very proficient where like you had the checkbox, you covered sort of like all these areas, but like I actually don't know the backstory, right? And so just like, why are you doing this? I'm curious, like, why are you doing this?
We are doing this because of the needs of organizations. We are friends with Latvian Hockey Federation. My friend is general marketing manager in that company, in that organization, and small, medium sports clubs have really big problems with fan engagement, and we saw that, and we saw an opportunity.
That doesn't, I'll be very, very honest with you, like that's actually not very compelling to me in general, where it's just like, great, I saw this opportunity, right? And so I took this opportunity, like, you know, do you play hockey? Do you, like, are you a sports person? Like, I want to understand.
No, I'm not a sports person, but my friends are. So I talked to them, and I saw opportunity to make this application.
Your thoughts?
I mean, generally speaking, I prefer that it's something that you face personally, and it's like, oh, this is such a big problem that I face that I'm going to do anything to solve it. That's generally what we're looking for in entrepreneurs, which is not to say that you can't build a great business spotting someone else's opportunity.
Yeah. But I would say, generally speaking, just, and like I said, it depends on the VC, but the reality is if you're pitching, and we're speaking as like Silicon Valley people, right? Like when you're pitching a Silicon Valley VC, they care a lot about, yes, we care a lot about the market and the business and all these things, but like we would actually prefer to fund a missionary, right? Like somebody who are just like, I really believe in this thing, like this is a core problem to me, because like these are the people that everyone knows, like startups are really freaking hard, right? So if you're working on something where because you see an opportunity, when it gets hard, most of those people quit. And so for us, we care a lot about, and this is not an indictment, we're using this as sort of like a teachable moment, like we care a lot about people who are like mission oriented, where it's like, I'm gonna work on this regardless of whether I raise money. I'm gonna work on this when like, when like everyone's telling me this is stupid. Those are the people who make it through, because the reality is that if you look at most very, very big successful startups, it's typically 9 to 12 years before there is some exit. And so it takes a long time. If you're doing this for a short period of time where you think that it's going to be an easy exit, you will probably not raise money from a VC investor, right? And so just as something sort of not indictment of you, it's more of just we're using this as a teachable moment.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience?
I knew that it will be like this, and you will tell that my presentation is not good, but that's the reason why I joined this event.
Yeah, no, that's
Great.
You're here to learn, right?
And kudos to you. I think many things about what you did were great. Like actually going up there and speaking without the slides, I think you did a nice job.
Yeah.
And actually your slides look really good. The product looks good. So I don't mean to be fully
Thanks.
critical.
Yeah.
Fun fact from what I understood from your colleague, this is your second time presenting in English.
Yes.
In a public
Second
stage. So
time,
you guys, round of applause for this man, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please. Thank you.
Well done.
Now, our next
Well done.
presenter and the next slides. We're good? All right.
Hi, my name is Simon and I'm introducing Hive. Our team is united by a single purpose. We want to become a global GNSS correction signal provider. And here's how we're going to do that. So there's a number of industries which can't imagine their day-to-day operations without high-precision satellite positioning and navigation. These industries are drones, unmanned air vehicles, cadastral surveyors, miners, constructors, even agriculture or science, when people want to study such phenomena as the motion of the Earth crust. In order to do their job, all of them need a professional GPS receiver. But in order to do their job done and get this much of precision, they need to access a special source of data that will correct floating signals that are coming from satellites. And this source of data is called a continuously operating reference station. These stations are deployed on the ground and form a ground infrastructure. Each station works within a range of 50 kilometers and sends corrections to an end user. Come on, Samsung. Give it a shot. Yes. So transmits corrections to an end user. And there are problems, of course, because governments can't pay enormous expenses to deploy a centralized ground infrastructure. Users are struggling to find a single access point to all deployed stations. And station owners don't want to pay overrated prices for station management software. So we saw that and created Hive. It's a cloud platform as a service that provides an easy access to all deployed stations around the world for everybody. It's like a super system that unites existing stations and existing pieces of infrastructure together. It's free for infrastructure owner or station owner, and users are those who monetize this system. They pay for the data. We are not pioneers here because we have competitors around the world. They're large TNCs. And they don't want to share their market with anybody else. That's why they create boxed solutions, which are expensive, difficult to use, and unable to integrate with anyone else. So here's Hive. We are in Russia. Based on our vision, we've estimated the related market volumes. Right now, we are working in Russia only in surveying segment, and we are on the way to reaching the market majority. However, we believe that the bright future is awaiting such countries with high development, such high developing countries with a high growth potential as Africa, Asia, Middle East, and South America. Based on our Russian experience, we believe that our go-to-market strategy will work there as well. So to users, we will propose products and services. To station owners, we will propose software and ways how to monetize their stations. And to governments there, we will propose a vision of an efficient ground infrastructure for high precision positioning. And following that strategy, we've become the biggest satellite correction data provider in terms of a number connected to the platform. So it's 500 stations right now. This is the number. And this is only with a team of 4. Wow. Come on. Yeah. But in order to grow wide and deep, we need to reinforce our product development team, tech support team, marketing, and sales team. So here, I'm not looking to meet a VC or get a funding. I need a strategic partner who will help us to develop our product and bring it to the countries where there is no ground infrastructure for high precision positioning. So, and make the world better, at least a little bit. Thank you.
Good presentation. One quick question. What is GNSS?
Global Navigation Satellite System.
Okay.
You should have said that right at the beginning because on the first several slides it said GNSS.
Okay.
I was thinking, what the hell is this thing?
I understand it, and when usually we pitch to someone, we feel that if a person does not understand what we are talking about, probably it's not the right investor or not the right person to talk to. So
I agree. You know, we have debates and discussions about this where sometimes if you're in a very specific field and you use a lot of jargon, where, you know, like technical terms or whatever, where it helps to basically when I'm pitching like 50 people and like only like 4 or 5 of them like helps me identify the investor. I actually think that, and I understand the point. My counter argument to that is you can never sort of like, from a clarity perspective, you just never know. And so my perspective is the fact that you actually make it easy for people to understand, people who are like, oh, wow, like I actually understand the problem, this is actually a big deal. That is actually helpful for you, where these people that may or may not understand your business could still be investors. And so I think it's a dangerous assumption, and you are limiting your optionality by doing that. Just by
that's fair. That's a fair point.
I think, I actually think regardless, you need to make it clear to everyone what you're doing. And I think maybe one of the things you could have done is like give an actual use case. Like, here's Sergey, he's driving a tractor and, you know, whatever, right? Like that would be more useful than the charts that you put up. Yeah. So I think like, again, it comes down to like being clear as to what your company does. And then also kind of like what we talked about with the last pitch, why are you doing this? What's your background? What drove you to do this? We didn't hear that from you.
So I started like 3 years back with this company when I just came back from my half year living in India, and I finished my studies, and I just wanted to go abroad and start my way there because we are based in the middle of nowhere in Siberia, little city called Omsk. Maybe you heard about that, maybe not. Yeah. So, and I knew that something like startup or technical entrepreneurship just could not be there. Just no way it will exist there. And I thought I should go like to Moscow or even further. Like lucky-wise, I meet this team who was at the start of this Hive, and I joined, and so we have a mission. We want to make something that many people think is impossible in our industry back in Russia. So we like to solve problems that are hard to solve. So like building an infrastructure in 4 persons. It's a great experience to start. So yeah, I
always say go back to Sheel's point where it's like, I think if you can incorporate some of your personal story, sometimes even just starting with that is actually helpful. And the other thing that I would say is just like case studies are very powerful, particularly for like technical, like very sort of like high tech, sort of like frontier tech stuff where it's sometimes hard for us to understand like what is a core use case. And then if we understand the core use case, it helps us understand sort of what the ultimate market is and who your customers are. But like without that, we're still having to kind of figure out where it's like, yeah, I think I understand what the market is, but I don't. And so just some suggestions where it's like you have all the pieces in your presentation. There's some things you can probably like rejigger, and if you can incorporate some use cases and case studies of like, here's this person who did this, and make it in a way that a case study is actually relevant for like folks in the room, right? And that's actually powerful. And that's actually a skill that I think like if more startup founders actually had, it actually increases your odds, both from a partnership perspective or from a investor perspective. But overall, I mean, it was deck is beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon or Simon. One thing I would love to do while you guys are here, if you don't mind, is take questions from the audience for next, let's say, 2 minutes or so before we go and have a break finally. Now, mic ready, box ready. These 2 gentlemen know a lot about pitching, a lot about investment. I would love to get your questions. One question right there. Sir, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Rives from Coffee Pixels, and I have a question regarding pitch deck more than pitching itself.
Yeah.
What do you say about sending pitch deck over to someone without really having a pitch live next to it?
Different people have different interpretations of this. I think you should send at least a teaser. It doesn't have to be your full deck, but you should send something that they can look at. I would generally include like a blurb about your company that they can read in a minute, and then a few slides that just describe more about what your company does.
Thank you.
I'm the same. I mean, generally speaking, though, if I'm honest, I will read the blurb. I get so many pitch decks. I usually will not read the pitch deck, and my view is different. Like some of my colleagues, they actually read the pitch deck because they can actually have more informed questions. For me, the communications and I would say the clarity of the communications aspect is very important. And so a lot of times I actually won't even look at the deck because I actually want to understand. Like I want you to describe it to me because I'm stupid. So if you can describe it to me and I understand it, that means like that clarity of the idea part is really important to me.
Thanks, guys.
No.
No video. Yeah. No.
One more question, guys. One more question. We have a large audience. Miss, please. All right. Oh, very good catch.
My name is Vanda.
Vanda,
And
hey.
I am a presentation and pitching trainer.
Hey.
So first of all, I have a comment. Actually, I'd like to say to all of the pitchers who are not native English speakers,
Yeah.
great job,
Yep.
because it takes a lot of course, courage to do so.
Yes.
Secondly, if you're not, even if you are a native English speaker or you aren't, when pitching, have some vocal presence. That is, first guy who spoke, I don't remember your name, don't remember the name of your company.
Oh.
Say it slowly and with some emphasis, because especially if you're a foreign sounding name, we have to catch it. So these are more suggestions than anything else. So slowly say the name of your company. Simon did a better job in the sense that he said his name, and just make sure that that's clear, the name of your company.
I think his name was Davis. Davis name Connectly. Collectly, as in collecting. So that is his name and the name of his company.
So just a suggestion. Thanks.
Very good. Now, guys, on this note, I kindly ask you to have a break. Thank you very much. And during the break, please put a business card in that little box right there. Thank you.